In the morning sun of San Francisco, the well-kept gardens of the mansion in Pacific Heights created a mosaic of light and shadow among the palm trees and yellow flowers that framed the property. It was March 2024, and the typical warmth of late summer made the monarch butterflies dance lazily among the garden flowers. There, running barefoot on the trimmed grass, was Isabella. The 5-year-old wore a light blue dress with a unicorn print, her light brown hair tied in 2 pigtails with colorful elastics that swayed as she chased the butterflies. Her brown eyes sparkled with curiosity and joy as she stretched her chubby little hands trying to touch the delicate wings of the insects. "Come here, sweetie. Come," she murmured with a sweet, crystal-clear voice, spinning in circles as an orange butterfly landed nearby. Her laughter echoed through the garden like music, even captivating the staff working around the property. From the spacious, modern kitchen, with marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, a 52-year-old woman watched the scene with a loving smile. Aunt May wiped her hands on her embroidered apron while following every movement of the girl. Her graying hair was tied in a low bun, and her round, expressive features revealed all the tenderness she felt for that child. "My beautiful girl," she whispered to herself, shaking her head affectionately. "God gave me the gift of caring for this little princess." Aunt May had weathered skin marked by time and worries, but her dark eyes retained the liveliness of someone who still believed in goodness. Born in a small town in the countryside, she had moved to San Francisco while still young in search of work. For 14 years, she had served the Almeida family with absolute dedication, witnessing the most important moments of life in that house. Isabella's birth, her first steps, her first words, and also the tragedy that marked everyone when the girl's mother, Sarah, suddenly died in a car accident. On the other side of the house, in the spacious office with mahogany bookshelves filled with business and law books, was Eduardo Almeida. At 45, the pharmaceutical businessman maintained the elegant posture that characterized him. Dark hair with silver strands at the temples, a flawless suit even at home, and a constantly worried expression. He spoke on the phone while organizing papers on the glass table. "No, Marcelo, the meeting with the Japanese investors has to be postponed. I need to resolve some issues at home first," he said, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of fatigue. "Talk to the secretary to reschedule for next week." Eduardo hung up the phone and walked to the window overlooking the garden. Watching Isabella play always brought a mix of joy and guilt to his heart. Since Sarah's death 2 years earlier, he felt lost in how to balance the work that supported the family's lifestyle and the need to be present for his daughter. The arrival of Lucy in his life had been like a breath of fresh air, a promise that Isabella would once again have a maternal figure. Lucy Fernandez was 28 years old and possessed a delicate beauty that caught attention wherever she went. Long, straight blonde hair, expressive green eyes, and a smile that had won Eduardo over at their first meeting at a charity event at the Palace of Fine Arts. She introduced herself as a recently graduated educator interested in volunteering with underprivileged children. Their romance was quick and intense, culminating in a discreet wedding just 7 months later. At that moment, Lucy was in the couple's bedroom, a spacious environment decorated in neutral tones, with a king-size bed and a privileged view of the pool. Sitting at the glass vanity, she applied red lipstick while carefully observing her reflection. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes revealed a tension that contrasted with the apparent serenity she maintained in front of her husband. "Today is the day," she murmured to herself, snapping the lipstick shut. "I can't delay any longer." Lucy stood up and walked to the window, watching Isabella in the garden. The girl was now sitting on the grass, making a crown of yellow flowers she had picked from the flower beds. There was something unsettling in the way Lucy observed her, not with the affection of a stepmother, but with the calculating gaze of someone assessing an obstacle. "Lucy, darling, are you ready?" Eduardo's voice echoed down the hallway. "I don't want ISA to be late for school." "I'm coming down," she replied, forcing a cheerful tone in her voice. Lucy descended the marble staircase, her heels echoing through the entrance hall decorated with contemporary art. Eduardo was waiting for her downstairs, already with the car keys in hand. He wore a light blue dress shirt and black dress pants, ready for another day of important meetings. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her on the cheek. "Are you sure you don't want me to take ISA today?" I can cancel the first meeting. Of course not, darling, Lucy replied, forcing a smile. You know how much I love taking my little princess to school. It's our special moment together. Eduardo smiled, relieved. Since their marriage, Lucy had seemingly taken on all the care for Isabella with dedication. The girl attended a prestigious bilingual school in Nob Hill, and Lucy always offered to make the trip, claiming it strengthened their bonds. Isabella, come here, my love, Lucy called, walking towards the garden. Time to go to school. The girl got up from the grass, holding her flower crown. Isabella ran towards her stepmother, her improvised flower crown bouncing on her head. Her bare little feet made a soft sound on the stone floor of the porch. Aunt Lucy, look what I made, Isabella said proudly, showing off her creation. It's a princess crown. Very pretty, dear, Lucy replied, her voice sounding strained. But now you need to put on your shoes and grab your backpack. We don't want to be late, do we? Aunt May appeared at the kitchen door, bringing Isabella's school backpack, a pink unicorn pattern bag that matched the girl's dress. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and something in that look made the cook's heart race. There was coldness there, a distance that didn't match the affectionate words. The lunchbox is in the backpack, Mrs. Lucy, Aunt May said, addressing her employer with the usual respect, but unable to completely hide her growing concern. I made the sandwich that Isa likes the most, with Swiss cheese and turkey breast. Thank you, May, Lucy replied curtly, taking the backpack from the employee's hands. Edward approached Isabella and knelt down to her level, gently fixing her hair with a paternal touch. Daddy is going to work today, princess, but when I come back, I want to hear all about what you learned in school, okay? Okay, Daddy, Isabella replied, kissing her father's cheek enthusiastically. Today Aunt Mary is going to teach us about garden critters. That's great. You can tell your butterflies here at home, Edward said, laughing. He stood up and kissed Lucy again. Call me if you need anything, all right? Of course, love. Have a good day. Edward got into his black BMW and drove off, waving from the window. As soon as the car disappeared around the corner, something subtly shifted in the atmosphere. Lucy took Isabella's hand, gripping it more firmly than necessary. Come on, Isabella. Time to go. Aunt May remained on the porch, watching mother and daughter head towards Lucy's silver Camry. There was something in the air that deeply unsettled her, a feeling she couldn't explain. Over the past 4 weeks, she had noticed small changes in her employer's behavior. Lucy returned from outings with Isabella always flustered, with wrinkled clothes and a distant look that contrasted sharply with the joy one would expect from someone who had just picked up a child from school. As Lucy adjusted Isabella in the car seat, the girl waved excitedly to Aunt May. Bye, Aunt May. I'm going to learn about butterflies today. Bye, my love. Aunt May will be here when you get back. The car slowly drove away down the tree-lined street, and Aunt May stood on the porch until it completely disappeared. Her borrowed mother's heart raced, as if sensing that this would not be just another ordinary morning. The instinct that had accompanied her for 5 decades whispered a warning she still couldn't fully comprehend. Back in the kitchen, Aunt May began washing the breakfast dishes, but her thoughts remained with Isabella. That girl had become much more than a professional responsibility. She was the little piece of family that God had placed in her path, and she would do anything to protect her. The kitchen clock read 2:30 in the afternoon when Aunt May heard the sound of the Camry entering the garage. It was earlier than usual. Lucy and Isabella typically returned around 4, after their morning and afternoon school sessions. The cook dried her hands on her apron and headed to the back door to greet them. You're home early today, she commented with a smile, expecting to see Isabella jump out of the car as she always did. But it was Lucy who got out first, and what Aunt May saw intrigued her. The white blouse was wrinkled, with a small dark stain near the right cuff. The blonde hair, which had been perfectly styled in the morning, now looked disheveled, as if she had run her hands through it several times. The most disturbing thing, however, was her eyes, red and with a lost, almost vacant expression. Mrs. Lucy, are you okay? Aunt May asked, approaching with concern. I'm fine, Lucy replied quickly, avoiding the employee's gaze. Just a little tired. The traffic was terrible today. From the back seat, Isabella slowly got out, holding her pink backpack. The girl, who usually came out excitedly talking about her day's activities, was strangely quiet. Her brown eyes looked sleepy, and she walked with slower steps than usual. My princess, how was school today? Aunt May asked, bending down to be at the girl's level. It was nice, Aunt May, Isabella replied, but her voice came out sluggish, as if she were very sleepy. Aunt Mary talked about butterflies, but I was sleepy in class. Aunt May frowned. Isabella had never been sleepy during the day. She was a bundle of energy who could hardly sit still. Something was definitely not right. Sleepy? But you slept well last night, didn't you, my love? I did, Lucy interrupted, grabbing the backpack from Isabella's hands with a swift motion. She's just a bit tired. There were a lot of activities at school today. I'll take her to rest in her room. But she hasn't even had lunch yet, Aunt May protested. I made the spaghetti with marinara sauce that she loves. No need. She ate at school, Lucy lied, already leading Isabella by the hand towards the staircase. Let her rest a bit. Aunt May stood in the hall, watching mother and daughter ascend the stairs. There was something deeply wrong with that situation, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Her motherly instincts, even if borrowed, were on high alert. She decided to discreetly follow them upstairs, pretending to tidy up the couple's clothes. Isabella's room was at the end of the hallway, decorated in shades of pink and purple, with a carrot-shaped bed and shelves filled with books. In the children's room filled with toys, Isabella could hear part of the conversation through the slightly ajar door. Aunt Lucy, why do I feel so sleepy after our outings? Isabella asked with a still drowsy voice. It's because you have so much fun, dear. When we have a lot of fun, we get a little tired, Lucy replied, but her voice sounded tense. Now lie down and rest. Don't tell your dad any of this, okay? It'll be our little secret. But why does it have to be a secret? Because adults sometimes don't understand children's games. Now sleep. Aunt May felt a chill run down her spine. Secrets between adults and children were never a good sign. Growing up in a large family in the countryside, where children were protected by everyone in the community, she had learned early to recognize signs of danger. She returned to the kitchen with a heavy heart and began preparing a snack for when Isabella woke up. As she cut fruits, her hands trembled slightly. 40 years of experience caring for children told her that something was very wrong. Around 5 o'clock, Edward came home from work. As always, he entered through the front door and went straight to his office to finish some calls. Aunt May waited a few minutes before heading there. Dr. Edward, may I speak with you for a minute? Of course, May. What's up? Edward looked up from his papers, noticing the worried expression on the staff member's face. It's about Isabella, doctor. She came home from school today very strange, very sleepy. That's not normal for her. Edward furrowed his brow. What do you mean strange? She was a bit. How can I explain it? A bit spaced out, you know? Like she had taken some medicine. And Lucy also came back very different, a bit nervous. May, don't you think you're exaggerating? Maybe they just had a tiring day. Lucy has been so dedicated to Isabella. Doctor, with all due respect, I've been caring for children for a long time. Isabella never gets sleepy during the day. And there's something else. Aunt May hesitated, knowing she might be crossing boundaries, but her concern spoke louder. In the past few weeks, Lucy has always come back agitated from those outings with the girl. And today she asked Isabella not to tell you anything about where they went. Edward stopped shuffling the papers and fixed his gaze on Aunt May. She said that. I heard when they were going upstairs. She said it had to be their little secret. A heavy silence filled the office. Edward had known Aunt May for over a decade and knew she would never make something like this up. At the same time, it was hard to believe that Lucy, who had shown so much affection for Isabella, could be hiding something. I'll talk to Lucy about this, he finally said. Thank you for telling me, May. I know you only care about Isabella's well-being. That's right, doctor. That girl is like my granddaughter. I can't just stand by and watch her like this. At that moment, Lucy appeared in the office doorway. Edward, you're home. I didn't hear the car come in. Hi, love. May was just telling me that Isabella was a bit strange today when they got back from school. Lucy shot a quick, cold glance at Aunt May before responding. Oh, it was nothing serious. She was just a little tired. We had a pretty busy day, right, May? Yes, Ms. Lucy, the cook replied, but her voice carried a palpable tension. Where did you go today? Edward asked, watching his wife's reactions closely. We went to school in the morning, then we took a little walk in the park, got some ice cream. Just normal stuff, Lucy replied, but Aunt May noticed that she avoided her husband's gaze while speaking. That's good. It's important for you two to have those moments together, Edward said, but something in his voice suggested he wasn't completely convinced. I'll check on Isabella, Lucy said, quickly leaving the office. Edward and Aunt May were alone again. The staff member could see the growing concern in her boss's eyes. Doctor, may I suggest something? Of course. Why don't you talk directly to Isabella? Children can't lie. If something strange happened, she'll tell you. Edward nodded slowly. You're right. I'll go upstairs to talk to her now. When Edward went upstairs, Aunt May stayed in the kitchen, but her ears were tuned to any sound coming from the upper floor. After a few minutes, she heard voices in Isabella's room. Daddy. The girl's voice sounded more cheerful now. You're home. Yes, princess. How was your day? It was nice, but I got really sleepy. Aunt Lucy said it's because I had so much fun. And where did you go today? There was a pause, and Aunt May could imagine Isabella thinking about her answer. We went to a different place. There were lots of small houses and children playing in the street. Aunt Lucy talked to a lady there. How interesting. And did you like the place? Sort of, Daddy. The kids there seemed sad. And Aunt Lucy talked to the lady for a long time. I was waiting in the car. Aunt May felt her heart race. That description didn't match a trip to the park or a visit to the mall, as Lucy usually told. And why would Isabella have been waiting in the car? ISA, do you remember where that place was? Not really, Daddy. But it was far from here. Aunt Lucy drove for a long time. From the hallway, Aunt May heard Lucy's voice approaching. Edward, what are you two talking about? Just asking about her day, Edward replied, but his voice sounded more serious now. Oh, that's good. ISA, how about we go downstairs for dinner? Aunt May made that spaghetti you love. Yay, Isabella exclaimed, and Aunt May heard the footsteps coming down the stairs. During dinner, served in the elegant dining room with a glass table and leather-upholstered chairs, Aunt May discreetly observed the family's dynamics. Isabella, Lucy was more cheerful, but still seemed a bit drowsy. She barely touched her food and answered Edward's questions evasively. The businessman, for his part, looked visibly thoughtful. Lucy, dear, tomorrow I have a canceled morning meeting. How about I take Isabella to school myself? Edward suggested, watching his wife's reaction. Lucy nearly knocked over her glass of water. Oh, you don't have to, Edward. I like taking her. Besides, you work so much. You should take the opportunity to rest a little more. But I also enjoy spending time with my daughter, he insisted, and Aunt May noticed a firmness in her boss's voice that she hadn't heard in a long time. Of course, it's just that. Well, as you wish, Lucy said, forcing a smile. Later, after the family retreated to the upper floor, Aunt May finished tidying up the kitchen with a heavy heart. Her suspicions were confirming, but she still wasn't sure exactly what was happening. One thing was certain, Isabella was in some kind of danger, and she wouldn't allow anything to happen to that child. Before leaving, Aunt May lived in a small apartment in the Forest Hill neighborhood, going home every night after dinner. She quietly went upstairs to say goodbye to Isabella, as she did every night. Good night, my princess, she whispered, kissing the forehead of the little girl who was already almost asleep. Good night, Aunt May. Will you be here tomorrow? Of course, my love. Aunt May will always be here to take care of you. As she walked to the bus stop on Market Street, Aunt May made a decision. From that day on, she would watch Lucy's every move with heightened attention. If something was happening to Isabella, she would find out what it was and do anything to protect the girl who had become the center of her world. The bus arrived, and she got on. But throughout the ride home, her thoughts remained in Pacific Heights, with a 5-year-old girl who needed protection more than ever. The next morning, Aunt May arrived at the mansion an hour earlier than usual. She used the key that Edward had given her years ago and quietly entered through the back door. The sun was just rising over San Francisco, painting the sky in orange hues that reflected off the house's windows. She had a plan, to discreetly observe the family's morning routine and try to uncover more clues about what was happening. She prepared coffee as she always did, but this time she paid attention to every sound coming from the upper floor. Around 7 o'clock, she heard Edward coming down for coffee before leaving for work. He seemed more alert than usual, checking the time and asking questions about the day's schedule. Good morning, May, he greeted, pouring himself a cup of coffee. I slept thinking about our conversation yesterday. Good morning, Dr. Edward. Have you decided anything? Yes. Today I'm going to take Isabella to school and pick her up too. I want to spend more time with her, and I want to understand this routine they have better. Aunt May nodded, feeling a momentary relief. I think that's a great idea, Doctor. Isabella will be very happy. Half an hour later, Lucy came down for breakfast. She wore a white blouse and jeans, her hair tied back in a low ponytail. Her eyes were slightly puffy, as if she hadn't slept well. Edward, I've thought better about you taking Isabella today, she said, pouring herself coffee with slightly trembling hands. Maybe it's better to keep her routine. Children like stability, don't they? Lucy, she's my daughter. I think I can take her to school whenever I want, Edward replied, and there was a firmness in his voice that Aunt May hadn't heard in a long time. Of course, I was just thinking about her well-being. And I'm also thinking about my daughter's well-being. The silence that followed was heavy. Aunt May continued preparing Isabella's snack, but her ears caught every nuance of the tension between the couple. Isabella came down a few minutes later, wearing her light blue school uniform and white knee-high socks. Her hair was in 2 braids that Lucy had done, but the little girl seemed less cheerful than usual. Good morning, Daddy. Good morning, Aunt Lucy. Good morning, Aunt May, she greeted, but her voice sounded a bit hoarse. Good morning, Princess, Edward said, kissing his daughter's forehead. Today Daddy is going to take you to school. How about that? Isabella's eyes lit up. Really, Daddy? That's cool. Aunt May observed Lucy's reaction. For a fraction of a second, she saw genuine panic in the woman's eyes before she managed to mask it with a forced smile. That's great, dear. You'll have so much fun, Lucy said, but her voice sounded strange. After father and daughter left, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Lucy started pacing back and forth, nervously fiddling with her phone. Aunt May pretended to be busy with household chores, but watched every movement of her employer. Mrs. Lucy, aren't you going out today? Aunt May asked, feigning casualness. No. I mean, maybe later. I have some things to take care of, Lucy replied, avoiding the employee's gaze. Around 10 o'clock, Lucy went upstairs and stayed there for almost an hour. Aunt May took the opportunity to make a discovery that left her even more worried. In the kitchen trash can, she found a small bottle of children's medication. It was a liquid sedative, the kind used to calm restless children before medical procedures. Her heart raced. She picked up the bottle and checked. It was empty, but the purchase date was recent, 3 days ago. Isabella had never taken this type of medication, and there certainly wasn't a doctor's prescription for it. With trembling hands, Aunt May took a photo of the bottle with her simple phone. She didn't have. Lucy had a lot of experience with technology, but her daughter, who lived in Oakland, had taught her how to use the device's camera. When Lucy came down again, Aunt May had already hidden the bottle in her bag. Mrs. Lucy, can I ask you something? What is it, May? Is Isabella taking any new medication? She seems a bit strange, very sleepy. Lucy visibly tensed. No, she isn't taking any medication. Why are you asking that? Oh, it's nothing really. It's just that a child being sleepy during the day always worries me. Back home, we learned that it can be a sign that something isn't right. Well, this isn't back home, Lucy replied tersely. And I would take better care of my stepdaughter than anyone. The harshness of her response confirmed Aunt May's suspicions. Something was definitely wrong. Around noon, Lucy left the house, saying she was going shopping at the Westfield San Francisco Center. But Aunt May, who knew her employer's habits well, found it strange. Lucy only took a small bag and didn't seem as excited as she usually did when going to the mall. Alone in the house, Aunt May decided to investigate further. She went up to the couple's bedroom and, with her heart racing, began searching for more evidence. In the master bathroom, she found another bottle of the same medication, this one half full. My God, she murmured, taking a picture of this bottle as well. What is this woman doing with my girl? Continuing her discreet search, she opened the drawer of Lucy's nightstand. Among papers and personal items, she found a crumpled business card. It was from a woman named Vanessa Smith, but there was no address or phone number, just a name and the word contacts handwritten. She took a picture of the card too, feeling like she was piecing together a terrible puzzle. When she went downstairs to continue with her household chores, Aunt May couldn't shake off what she had discovered. 2 hours later, she heard the sound of Edward's Audi arriving. From the window, she saw father and daughter getting out of the car, and she felt relieved to notice that Isabella seemed more cheerful and alert than in recent days. Aunt May, Isabella shouted, running into the kitchen. Daddy took me for ice cream after school. That's wonderful, my princess. Aunt May replied, hugging the girl affectionately. You seem happier today. Edward appeared in the kitchen doorway, and Aunt May noticed that he was also observing the difference in his daughter's behavior. Her teacher said she participated in all the activities normally today, Edward commented. Yesterday, the teacher mentioned that she was a bit sleepy during class. Interesting, Aunt May said, exchanging a meaningful glance with her employer. Where's Lucy? Edward asked. She went shopping, doctor. She should be back soon. Edward nodded, but Aunt May could see that he was processing the information. The difference in Isabella's behavior when she spent the day without Lucy was striking. Around 5 o'clock, Lucy returned home. She only had a small bag from the mall, which confirmed Aunt May's suspicions that this hadn't been a normal shopping afternoon. How was your day? Lucy asked, kissing Edward on the cheek and smoothing Isabella's hair. It was great, Edward replied. Isabella was super excited at school. The teacher even commented on the difference. That's nice, Lucy said, but Aunt May noticed that she avoided looking directly at her stepdaughter. During dinner, Edward made an announcement that visibly unsettled Lucy. Honey, I've been thinking. How about we all go out together tomorrow? I can cancel a few meetings. We could go to the zoo, or the park, or wherever Isabella wants. Tomorrow. Lucy nearly choked on her juice. Oh, I already had some appointments scheduled. What kind of appointments? Things, feminine things. You know, salon, that sort of stuff. You can reschedule for another day. How long has it been since we all went out together? Isabella clapped her hands excitedly. I want to go to the zoo. I want to see the monkeys. Then it's settled, Edward said, his voice leaving no room for discussion. Zoo tomorrow. Lucy forced a smile, but Aunt May could see the desperation in her eyes. After dinner, when the family went upstairs, Aunt May stayed in the kitchen organizing her discoveries of the day. She now had 3 photos on her phone, 2 bottles of medication and a suspicious business card. But she knew she needed more evidence before making any accusations. Before leaving, she went up to say goodbye to Isabella, as she always did. The girl was playing with her dolls in her room and seemed much happier than in recent days. Aunt May, tomorrow I'm going to the zoo with Daddy and Aunt Lucy. That's wonderful, my princess. You're going to love seeing the animals. Aunt May, Isabella's voice lowered. Can I tell you a secret? Aunt May's heart raced. Of course, my love. Sometimes, when I go out with Aunt Lucy, I get scared. She gets really nervous and takes me to strange places. What kind of strange places? Places with small houses and people who look at me in a weird way. And Aunt Lucy always tells me not to tell Daddy anything. Aunt May felt a chill run down her spine. She knelt beside Isabella's bed and held her small hands. My princess, you can tell me anything, okay? And you can tell Daddy everything too. It's never right for an adult to ask a child to keep secrets from their parents. Really, if someone tells you not to tell Daddy something, you come talk to me or him, okay? Okay, Aunt May. As she drove home that night, Aunt May knew she couldn't wait any longer. The evidence was piling up, and Isabella was clearly in danger. She decided that the next day, while the family was at the zoo, she would investigate further. She needed to find out who Vanessa Smith was and why Lucy was drugging a 5-year-old child. The bus swayed through the streets of San Francisco, but Aunt May barely noticed the movement. Her thoughts were focused on one thing: protecting Isabella at all costs. Even if it meant confronting her employers, even if it meant risking her job, she would not allow anything to happen to the girl who had become the center of her world. Saturday dawned cloudy in San Francisco, with heavy clouds threatening rain. Aunt May arrived at the mansion earlier than usual, even though it was the weekend. She had arranged with Edward to prepare a special snack for the family outing to the zoo, but her true intention was very different. The family left around 9 in the morning. Edward seemed excited about spending the day with his daughter. Isabella practically bounced with joy, and Lucy was trying to hide her obvious anxiety behind a forced smile. Have a great time, said Aunt May, waving from the porch as they got into the Audi. As soon as the car disappeared around the corner, she sprang into action. She went straight up to the couple's bedroom and began a more thorough search. Her heart raced. She had never violated her employer's privacy like this, but Isabella's life was at stake. In the second drawer of Lucy's dresser, she found something that made her blood run cold: a brown envelope containing photographs of Isabella. These were not ordinary family photos. They were images of the girl sleeping, playing alone in the garden, and some taken from a distance, as if someone had been secretly watching the house. "Holy Mother of God," she murmured, photographing each image with her trembling hands. Continuing the search, she found a file folder at the back of the wardrobe. Inside were documents that horrified her even more. Copies of birth certificates of other children, all between 4 and 7 years old, all from seemingly affluent families. There was also a notebook with handwritten notes containing detailed information about school schedules, family routines, and personal data. "My God, this is a network," she whispered, photographing page by page of the notebook. What shocked her the most was finding a list with names of children and amounts of money next to them. Some names were crossed out with red pen, and next to them was written "completed." Isabella's name was on the list, with an astronomical amount noted, $150,000. Aunt May sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. This was not just negligence or mistreatment. It was something much worse. It was child trafficking, and Isabella was being prepared to be sold. She continued photographing evidence with her cell phone, even knowing she was committing an invasion of privacy. She also found receipts for bank deposits in fractional amounts, always in different accounts, and business cards from people with names she did not recognize. In a small leather notebook, she discovered noted addresses. One caught her attention: Vanessa Smith, Acacia Street, 347, Redwood City. It was the same name as the card she had found earlier. Her cell phone rang, startling her. It was Edward. "Hello, May. I forgot to ask, but can you make that chocolate cake that Isa loves? We want to celebrate the special day when we get back." "Of course, Dr. Edward. Are you having fun?" "Yes, Isa is loving it. But Lucy is acting a bit strange, kind of nervous. It must be because she's not used to crowds. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'll prepare the cake." After hanging up, Aunt May made a decision that would change everything. She copied Vanessa Smith's address onto a piece of paper and decided she would go there. She needed to see with her own eyes what was happening. She went downstairs, locked the house, and took a bus to Redwood City. The trip took almost an hour, passing through increasingly simple neighborhoods until reaching the outskirts of the metropolitan area. Acacia Street was in a working-class neighborhood, with small houses and unpaved streets. Number 347 was a simple house, painted a faded blue, with bars on the windows and an iron gate. Aunt May watched from a distance, pretending to wait for a bus at a nearby stop. After a few minutes, she saw a woman leave the house. It was an elderly lady, around 60 years old, with gray hair and simple clothes. She decided to approach and knock on the door. A younger woman answered, around 30 years old, with tired features and a suspicious look. "Good afternoon. Are you Vanessa Smith? Who wants to know?" "My name is May. I'm looking for information about children who need a home." The woman looked her up and down, assessing whether she posed any danger. "Who referred you?" Aunt May quickly improvised. "A mutual acquaintance. Lucy. She said you might be able to help me." The woman's expression changed immediately. "Oh, Lucy. Come in, come in. I am Vanessa." The inside of the house was simple but clean. In the living room, there were several photos of children pinned to a bulletin board on the wall. Aunt May recognized some of the photos she had seen in Lucy's room. "Lucy is very dedicated to our work," said Vanessa, serving a glass of water. "She has a special talent for identifying the right children." "The right children for what?" Aunt May asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "For families that can offer a better life, right? You know how it is. There are many rich and spoiled children who don't know how to appreciate what they have. And there are so many poor families wanting to give love." Aunt May's stomach turned, but she continued to pretend interest. "And how does this process work?" "Well, it's delicate, right? Lucy has access because of her position. She identifies the children, prepares them for the transition. We have contacts with families that pay well to have a beautiful and educated child." "Prepare how?" "Oh, she gets them used to it. With different places, with different people. Give them some calming medication to help them during the process. It's more humane that way, you know. The child doesn't suffer." Aunt May felt nauseous but forced a smile. "And how much? How much do these families usually pay?" "It depends on the child. A pretty little girl from a wealthy family, well-educated, could be worth up to $200,000. We split it 50-50 with whoever brings the child." "Wow, that's a lot of money." "It is. Lucy is almost closing a very good deal. A beautiful little girl, 5 years old, from a millionaire family. The buyer has already paid half up front. Aunt May's blood ran cold. They were talking about selling Isabella. When will the transition happen? Next week. Lucy is just waiting for the right moment. The child's father travels a lot, so it will be easy. Aunt May stood up quickly. Well, I'll think it over and get back to you. Of course, dear. But don't take too long, okay? Opportunities like this are rare. During the ride back to San Francisco, Aunt May couldn't stop shaking. Now she knew exactly what was happening. Lucy had infiltrated the family with the sole purpose of kidnapping and selling Isabella. The outings were to get the girl accustomed to the environment where she would be handed over. The sedatives were to facilitate transport. And the worst part, it was going to happen next week. She returned to the mansion just as the family was coming back from the zoo. Isabella ran to hug her, excitedly telling her about the animals she had seen. Aunt May, I saw a giant elephant. And monkeys that did this. The girl mimicked the gestures of the primates, laughing joyfully. That's great, my princess, Aunt May said, hugging the girl tightly as if she wanted to protect her from all the dangers in the world. Edward seemed more relaxed, but Lucy was visibly tense. Throughout dinner, she barely spoke, nervously fiddling with her phone. Lucy, are you okay? Edward asked. You've been acting strange all day. I'm just a little tired. It was a lot of activity at the zoo. Aunt May watched Lucy's every move, now knowing exactly what she was capable of. When it was time to leave, she said goodbye to Isabella as always, but this time with a heart heavy with anguish. Aunt May, are you coming early tomorrow? The girl asked. Of course, my princess. Aunt May will always be here to take care of you. But as she walked to the bus stop, Aunt May knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had enough evidence, knew the plan, and realized time was short. On Monday morning, she would take action. Even if it meant confronting dangerous people, even if it meant putting her own life at risk, she would not allow Isabella to be sold like an object. That night, Aunt May barely slept. In her small apartment in the Nob Hill neighborhood, she organized all the photos she had taken, wrote down everything she had discovered, and made the most important decision of her life. The next morning, she would tell Edward everything, and together they would save Isabella. The wall clock struck 3 in the morning when she finally managed to fall asleep, but even in her dreams, she saw Isabella's angelic face asking for protection. And she had promised to protect that child, a promise she would keep, no matter the cost. Sunday dawned with a gray sky over San Francisco, mirroring the anguish that filled Aunt May's heart. She had spent the night awake, mentally organizing how she would tell Edward everything. She knew she had only a few hours before it was too late. She arrived at the mansion at 7 in the morning, using her key as she always did on weekends when the family needed her services. The house was silent, but she could hear movements upstairs. Edward usually woke up early even on Sundays to read newspapers and respond to emails. She prepared the coffee with trembling hands, rehearsing the words she would use. How could she explain to a father that the woman he trusted was planning to sell his daughter? Around 8 o'clock, Edward came down for breakfast. He was wearing a navy blue polo shirt and denim shorts, a more casual look that contrasted with the seriousness Aunt May saw in his eyes. Good morning, May. You're here early today. Good morning, Dr. Edward. I need to talk to you about something very important. Edward immediately noticed the tension in the employee's voice. What happened? Is it about ISA? Yes, doctor. But it's a conversation that needs to be just between us, without Mrs. Lucy around. Edward's expression turned grave. They are still sleeping. We can talk now. Let's go to the office. In the office, with the door closed, Aunt May took a deep breath before starting. Edward sat behind the desk, and she remained standing, holding her bag tightly where all the evidence was. Dr. Edward, what I'm going to tell you will be very hard to hear, but I need you to listen to me until the end. I'm listening, May. Mrs. Lucy, she is not who you think she is. She married you to kidnap Isabella. Edward abruptly stood up from his chair. May, that's a very serious accusation. Are you sure about what you're saying? I am, doctor. And I have proof. Aunt May took out her phone and began showing the photos she had taken. Look here, medication to sedate children. Photos of Isabella taken secretly. A list with names of children and amounts of money. Edward took the phone with trembling hands, observing each image. His face paled as he processed what he was seeing. My God, this can't be true. And there's more, doctor. Yesterday, I went to an address I found in her things. I spoke with a woman named Vanessa Smith. She told me everything. It's a child trafficking network. Mrs. Lucy has already sold other children, and Isabella is next. Edward slumped into the chair, running his hands through his hair in despair. How did I not notice? How could I be so blind? You trusted, doctor. It's not your fault. These people are very clever. They know how to deceive. Did she say when they were going to take ISA? Next week. She said everything is planned for when you travel for work. Edward stood up again, this time with determination. We have to call the police right now. Doctor, wait. Aunt May grabbed his arm. If we call the police now, Lucy might get suspicious and speed up the plan. Or she might run away, and we may never find those other children on the list. So what do you suggest? Let's pretend we don't know anything. I'll keep watching her, and you act normal. But don't let Isabella be alone with her for even a minute. At that moment, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Lucy was coming down. Edward, are you there? Her voice echoed down the hallway. Edward and Aunt May exchanged glances. He took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. I'm here in the office, love. Just talking to Aunt May about the week's agenda. Lucy appeared at the office door. She wore a pink silk robe and her hair was messy, but her eyes were alert and suspicious. What exactly are you talking about? About Isabella's meals this week. Edward quickly improvised. Aunt May wanted to know if I have any trips planned. Oh. Lucy relaxed a little, but continued to watch the two of them closely. And do you? No, I'm staying home all week. I want to spend more time with the family. Aunt May saw a flash of panic in Lucy's eyes before she managed to hide it. That's great. Isabella will love having Daddy around. Where is she? Edward asked. Still sleeping. Yesterday was a tiring day at the zoo. I'm going up to see her, Edward said, leaving the office. Lucy and Aunt May were left alone for a few seconds. The silence between them was charged with tension. Aunt May, can I ask you something? Of course, Lucy. Don't you think you're being overprotective with Isabella? Sometimes I get the impression that you don't trust me. Aunt May looked directly into her eyes. Lucy, I've been taking care of that girl for 5 years. She's like my granddaughter. Of course, I'm going to protect her from anything that could hurt her. Anything like what? Anything, Lucy. Anything at all. The gaze between the two women held for long seconds. Lucy was the first to look away. Well, I'm going to have coffee. Can you make pancakes for ISA? She loves them. When Lucy left, Aunt May felt that the war had been declared. Lucy suspected that she knew something, and that made the situation even more dangerous. Edward returned from Isabella's room a few minutes later, bringing the little girl by the hand. She was wearing a unicorn pajama, and her hair was messy from just waking up. Aunt May, she exclaimed, running to hug the caretaker. Good morning. Good morning, my beautiful princess, Aunt May said, hugging the girl tightly. Did you sleep well? I did. I dreamed about the elephants at the zoo. During breakfast in the kitchen, Edward had insisted they have coffee there instead of the formal dining room. Aunt May observed every interaction between Lucy and Isabella. Now that she knew the truth, she could see signs she had previously ignored. How Lucy avoided genuine displays of affection, how her smiles for the girl were forced, how she tensed up whenever Isabella got too close. Aunt Lucy, are we going for a walk today? Isabella asked innocently. No, dear. Today we're staying home. Daddy is going to spend the day with us. Edward noticed the relief in Lucy's voice at knowing he would be present. Actually, Edward said, how about we all go to Golden Gate Park? It's a beautiful day, even with the clouds. Yay! Isabella shouted. Can I bring my new kite? Of course, princess. Lucy looked visibly upset. Edward, love, don't you think it's better if we stay home? It's a bit cloudy. A little fresh air will do us all good, Edward insisted, and there was a firmness in his voice that Lucy wasn't used to hearing. As the family prepared to leave, Aunt May tidied up the kitchen, thinking about the next steps. She and Edward had agreed on discreet signals. If anything went wrong, she would call him immediately. And if Lucy tried to leave alone with Isabella, she would follow her, even if it meant revealing that she knew everything. When they left for the park, Aunt May stayed at the house, but her eyes were glued to the window, and her phone was always in hand. There was a feeling that a storm was about to break over all of them. Around noon, her phone rang. It was Edward. May, Lucy is acting very strange. She got nervous when ISA wandered a few meters away to play, and she's been fiddling with her phone nonstop. Doctor, don't leave the girl alone for a second. And if Lucy wants to leave before you do, make up any excuse to keep her there. You got it. May, thank you for discovering this. I don't know what would happen to ISA if you hadn't noticed. Isabella is my girl too, Doctor. I would give my life for her. When she hung up the phone, Aunt May looked out the window at the garden where Isabella played every morning with the butterflies. In a few days, if she hadn't discovered it in time, that garden would be empty forever. But now she knew the truth, and she wouldn't rest until Isabella was safe and Lucy paid for all her crimes. The battle was just beginning, but Aunt May was determined to win it, even if it meant the last thing he would do in his life. Monday arrived heavy with tension. Aunt May woke up at 5 in the morning, her stomach tied in knots from nervousness. She knew it would be a decisive day. Edward had promised to confront Lucy as soon as he had a safe opportunity, and they had devised a plan to protect Isabella. She arrived at the mansion at 6:30, finding the house still silent. She prepared coffee as usual, but this time she discreetly checked that all the doors and windows were locked. She couldn't risk Lucy trying to run away with Isabella. Around 7 o'clock, Edward came down for coffee. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept well. Good morning, May. I spent the whole night thinking about how we're going to do this. Good morning, Doctor. Did you come to any conclusions? Yes. I'm going to confront her today, but first I need to make absolutely sure that ISA is safe. Can you stay here all day? Of course, Doctor. Even if I have to sleep here, I won't leave Isabella's side. Edward nodded, but before he could respond, they heard footsteps on the stairs. It was Lucy, coming down earlier than usual. She was wearing a red blouse and dark jeans, carrying a large bag, bigger than she usually used for normal activities. Good morning, she said, but her voice sounded tense. Edward, darling, today I'm taking ISA to meet some of my friends. We might be a bit late. Edward and Aunt May exchanged a quick glance. Lucy's plan was being rushed. What friends are those? Edward asked, keeping his voice casual. Oh, some college friends who have kids Isabella's age. I thought it would be good for her to socialize with other children. Interesting. Where do they live? In Oakland. In a really nice condo over there. Aunt May noticed the hesitation in Lucy's response. She was clearly improvising. You know what, love? Edward said, standing up from the table. I canceled all my meetings today. How about I go with you? I'd like to meet your friends. The panic in Lucy's eyes was instant, although she tried to disguise it. Oh, you don't need to, Edward. You work so much. Take the time to rest. But I want to go. How long has it been since we did something as a family? It's just that they're a bit shy around strangers. Maybe it's better if I go alone with ISA this time. Edward stepped closer to Lucy, and Aunt May could see the tension rising between them. Lucy, since when do my friends get shy around me? I'm the husband. Since when are they your friends? The irritation in Lucy's voice was starting to leak out. They are my friends, Edward. Sure, my apologies. I misspoke. Edward strategically backed off. But I still want to go. At that moment, Isabella came running down the stairs, already dressed in her school uniform. Good morning, everyone, she chirped, rushing to hug Aunt May. Today we have gym class. I'm going to play soccer. Edward knelt down to his daughter's level. Princess, Aunt Lucy said that today you're going to visit some friends instead of going to school. Isabella frowned. But I want to go to school, Daddy. Today Aunt Mary is going to teach about the planets. ISA, dear, Lucy interrupted, with a forced sweet voice. Aunt Lucy's friends have a little girl your age who is very excited to meet you. Don't you want to make a new friend? Can I meet her another day? Today I really want to go to school. Aunt May watched the frustration growing on Lucy's face. The woman was clearly losing control of the situation. ISA, you are going with me today, and that's final, Lucy said, with a firmness that startled the girl. Lucy, Edward stood up abruptly. Don't talk to my daughter like that. She needs to learn to obey when an adult speaks to her. She is obedient, but she also has the right to express her preferences. Isabella, sensing the tension in the air, moved closer to Aunt May and held her hand. Aunt May, did I do something wrong? Of course not, my princess. You didn't do anything wrong. Lucy glared at Aunt May in anger. May, you shouldn't interfere in family matters. Isabella is my family too, Aunt May replied, raising her voice for the first time in 14 years of working in that house. I've cared for this girl since she was born. You're an employee here. Don't confuse things." The silence that followed was heavy. Edward watched the exchange between the two women, realizing that there was much more going on than just a simple discussion about schedules. "Lucy," Edward said slowly, "can I talk to you privately?" "Not now, Edward. I'm running late." "Late for what? You haven't even called your friends to confirm the time." Lucy realized she had complicated things. I confirmed last night." "Funny. Last night you were watching a movie with me in the living room until 10 o'clock. When exactly did you call?" The tension was becoming unbearable. Isabella began to cry softly, frightened by the argument between the adults. "Why are you fighting?" she asked between sobs. Aunt May knelt beside the girl and hugged her. "We're not fighting, my love. It's just a little adult conversation." Edward made a decision. "Lucy, let's talk in the office." "Now." "Edward, I really need to leave." "Now, Lucy." The firmness in Edward's voice made Lucy back down. She looked at Isabella, then at Aunt May, weighing her options. "Fine, but it will be quick." As they left for the office, Aunt May picked up Isabella and carried her to the kitchen. "My princess, how about we make a cake while Daddy and Aunt Lucy talk? Can it be chocolate? It can be any flavor you want." In the office, Edward closed the door and turned to face Lucy. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, in a defensive posture. "Lucy, I'm going to make a. Ask me, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "What question?" Edward took a deep breath. "Who is Vanessa Smith?" The color drained from Lucy's face. I don't know who that is." "Don't lie to me, Lucy. I know about the medications. I know about the photos. I know about the list of children. I know everything." Lucy remained silent for a few seconds, processing what Edward had said. When she spoke, her voice was different, colder, devoid of the sweet pretense of the past few months. "How did you find out? That doesn't matter. What matters is that I know you married me to take my daughter." "Take is a very strong word, Edward." "Then what would you call it?" Lucy shrugged, as if they were discussing the dinner menu. "Reallocation." Isabella was going to a family that really needs a daughter, in exchange for money, in exchange for a better opportunity for her. Edward felt nauseous hearing the coldness in the voice of the woman he had shared a bed with for the past few months. "Lucy, how many children have you?" "Reallocated?" Isabella would be the fifth. "My God." Edward let himself fall into the chair. "You are a monster. I am a survivor, Edward. You don't know what it's like to grow up with nothing, with no one. Those spoiled rich kids don't know how to appreciate what they have." "Isabella is 5 years old, Lucy. 5 years old. And she will grow up thinking the world owes her everything. At least with the new family, she will learn to value things." Edward stood up again, this time with anger. "You're crazy if you think I'm going to let you lay a finger on my daughter. You have no choice, Edward. If you report me, I disappear, and you'll never know where the other children are. Do you want that on your conscience? Are you blackmailing me? I'm being practical. Let me take Isabella today, and then I disappear from your life. Everyone wins. Except my daughter, who will be sold like an object. Your daughter will be loved by people who truly want a child." Edward looked at Lucy as if he were seeing her for the first time. The mask had finally fallen completely, revealing someone he could never have imagined existed. "Lucy, you have two options. Either you surrender right now, or I call the police, and you will never see the light of day again." Lucy smiled coldly. "You're underestimating the situation, Edward. I'm not alone in this. If you harm me, you'll harm a lot of powerful people." "What kind of people?" "People you don't want as enemies." At that moment, from the kitchen, the sound of Isabella's laughter reached them, mixing ingredients with Aunt May. The sound seemed to echo through the office as a reminder of what was at stake. Edward looked at Lucy one last time. "I will save my daughter, Lucy, and I will make you pay for all the crimes you've committed. Good luck trying to prove anything." But when Edward opened the office door, he found Aunt May standing outside, holding her cell phone. "Sorry, Dr. Edward, but I heard everything, and I recorded it too." Lucy's face transformed into a mask of pure hatred. "You nosy maid? That nosy maid just saved your daughter," Aunt May said, staring at Lucy fearlessly. "And now all this conversation is recorded on my phone." Edward smiled for the first time in days. "Looks like the game is over, Lucy." But Lucy, cornered, still had an ace up her sleeve. "You don't know who you're messing with," she said, grabbing her phone and dialing a number. "Hello? It's an emergency. I need someone here now. The war was far from over, but now, finally, Aunt May and Edward knew exactly who they were up against. The tension in the office was palpable as Lucy hung up the phone. Edward and Aunt May watched her every move, knowing that a cornered woman could be extremely dangerous. "Who did you call?" Edward asked, but before Lucy could respond, the sound of little feet running through the house interrupted them. "Daddy, Aunt May, where are you?" Isabella's cheerful voice echoed down the hallway. "We're here, my princess," Aunt May shouted, quickly leaving the office to intercept the girl before she witnessed anything that might scare her. She found Isabella in the hall, her little hands covered in flour and a radiant smile on her face. "Aunt May, the cake is already in the oven. Can I lick the bowl?" "Of course, my love. Let's go to the kitchen and wash your hands first." As she led Isabella away from the chaos, Aunt May heard Edward speaking to Lucy in a low but firm tone. "Lucy, no matter who you called, this ends today. I won't allow you to put my daughter in danger for another second." In the kitchen, Aunt May helped Isabella wash her hands while keeping her ears tuned to the sounds coming from the office. The girl was blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding just a few meters away. "Aunt May, why were Daddy and Aunt Lucy talking in a loud voice?" "Sometimes adults need to resolve important things, my love. It's nothing for you to worry about. But I don't like it when people talk loudly. It reminds me of when Mommy in heaven got sick and screamed." Aunt May's heart tightened. Isabella rarely spoke about the last weeks of her biological mother's life, when Sarah was very ill and sometimes became irritable due to the pain. "My princess, come here." Aunt May knelt down and hugged the girl. "No matter what happens, Aunt May will always be here to take care of you, okay? Always, always. Always, always." At that moment, they heard the sound of a doorbell ringing. Edward appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face tense. "May, can you take Isa to her room? And close the door." "Of course, doctor. Come on, Isabella, let's play up there while the cake bakes." "But I want to see who arrived." "We'll see later, my love. Now let's play with your dolls." Aunt May carried Isabella up the stairs, but as soon as they reached the girl's room, she pressed her ear against the door to try to hear what was happening downstairs. She heard unfamiliar male voices talking with Edward and Lucy in the entryway. The voices were low, but the tone was clearly tense. "Isabella, do you want to play school?" Aunt May asked, trying to distract the girl while paying attention to the sounds coming from downstairs. "I want to. I'll be the teacher and you will be the student." As Isabella organized her dolls and children's books for the game, Aunt May heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Her heart raced. What if they were Lucy's accomplices coming to get Isabella? Someone knocked softly on the door. "May? It's me, Edward. Can I come in?" She opened the door quickly. Edward entered and closed the door behind him, but his face was more relaxed than before. "Daddy." Isabella ran to hug him. "Come play school with us." "Of course, princess. But first, Daddy needs to have a quick chat with Aunt May." Edward approached Aunt May and whispered, "The police have arrived. I called a friend who's a detective while you were here with Isa. Lucy tried to make up a story that we were threatening her, but when they showed the recording from her phone, she had no way out. And now they're going to take her in for questioning, and they will investigate the whole network. But we need to keep Isa away from all this." "Daddy, what are you two whispering about?" Isabella asked, looking curiously at the two adults. "We were talking about a surprise, princess," Edward improvised. "How about we don't go to school today and just play at home instead?" "Yay. Can I call Grandma Celia to play with us?" Edward smiled. Celia was Sarah's mother, who lived in San Francisco but visited Isabella whenever she could. "Of course. I'll call her now." They went downstairs together. In the entryway, Aunt May saw Lucy handcuffed between two police officers. The woman who had pretended to be a caring stepmother for months was now showing her true face. Cold, calculating, and showing no remorse. When Lucy saw Isabella, she tried to force one last smile. "Goodbye, Isabella. Take care, okay?" Isabella hid behind Edward's leg, instinctively suspicious. "Daddy, why is Aunt Lucy with those gentlemen?" "She's going to be away for a while, princess. She's going to see new places." One of the police officers approached Edward. "Dr. Edward, we need you to come to the station this afternoon to formalize the complaint. And the employee too." "Of course." Isabella will stay with her grandmother. After the police left with Lucy, the house fell silent. Edward sat on the living room sofa, and pulled Isabella onto his lap. "Daddy, is Aunt Lucy coming back?" Edward exchanged a glance with Aunt May before responding. "No, Princess. She's not coming back." "Why?" "Because sometimes people change their plans and go live in other places." Isabella seemed to process this information for a few seconds. "Daddy, can I say something?" "Of course, my love. I didn't like it very much when Aunt Lucy took me out. She got nervous and gave me medicine that made me very sleepy." Edward felt a pang in his heart. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "She said it was our secret. That daddies don't understand girls' games." "Princess, you can tell Daddy anything. It's never right for an adult to ask you to keep secrets from your parents." Aunt May said that too. Edward looked at Aunt May with deep gratitude. Aunt May was right. She is always right when it comes to taking care of you. At that moment, the phone rang. It was Celia, Isabella's grandmother, returning Edward's call. "Celia? It's Edward. Something's happened here, and I would like you to come spend a few days with us." "No, it's nothing serious, but it would be good to have you around, Isa. Can you come today?" "Great. I'll explain everything when you arrive." After hanging up, Edward turned to Aunt May. "May, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. You saved my daughter." "Dr. Edward, this girl is my family too. I would do anything for her. And I know that. That's why I want you to know that, starting today, your situation here is going to change. I don't want you to be just an employee anymore. I want you to be an official part of the family." Aunt May felt her eyes fill with tears. Daddy, does this mean Aunt May is going to live here with us?" Isabella asked excitedly. "If she wants to," Edward replied. "There's a maid's room here that can be renovated, and your salary will increase considerably." "Dr. Edward, I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Aunt May," Isabella urged. "That way you can tell me stories every day before bed." Aunt May looked at the girl who had become the center of her world, and then at Edward, who was watching her with sincere gratitude. "Of course, my princess. Aunt May will stay here forever." As the three embraced in the living room, the smell of chocolate cake wafted to them from the kitchen. It was an aroma of home, of family, of safety. Outside, San Francisco continued its normal routine, but inside that house near Golden Gate Park, a new family was forming, not by blood ties, but by the bonds of true love and mutual protection. The battle was won, but Aunt May knew that the war against those who mistreated children would never completely end. That's why Isabella would stay there, vigilant, protecting Isabella and any child who needed her protection. Because some people are born to be guardians, and Aunt May had finally found her true purpose in life. 3 days after Lucy's arrest, the San Francisco police station was buzzing with one of the largest operations against child trafficking of the decade. Edward and Aunt May had given detailed testimonies, and the evidence found in Lucy's room had led investigators to a much broader network than they initially imagined. The lead detective on the case, Dr. Mark Johnson, was a 50-year-old man with gray hair and an experienced gaze. He had worked on child crime cases throughout his career, but had rarely seen such a well-organized operation. "Dr. Edward," he said during a meeting at the station, "the information you provided has led us to discover something much larger. Lucy was not just an isolated criminal. She was part of an international child trafficking organization." Edward, who was sitting next to Aunt May in the detective's office, felt his stomach churn. "International? Yes. We found contacts with people in Paraguay, Bolivia, and even Europe. Brazilian children from affluent families were ordered by foreign families who paid fortunes for them." Aunt May shook her head in horror. "How many children, detective?" "So far, we have identified at least 15 cases in the last 3 years. Some have already been located and are being reunited with their true families. Others," the detective hesitated. "Others we are still searching for." Edward ran his hands through his hair. "How could I have been so blind? How did I not notice anything?" "Dr. Edward, these people are professionals. They study their victims for months before acting. Lucy likely investigated your family long before she approached you. Did she know about Sarah's death?" "She did. In fact, we discovered that she frequented the same places as you a few months before you coincidentally met at that charity event. She created several opportunities for you to bump into each other." Aunt May felt a chill. "Does that mean she was planning from the beginning?" "Exactly. And this was not the first time. We found evidence that she used this same strategy with at least 2 other wealthy widowers in San Francisco and Los Angeles." Edward stood up from his chair and began to pace the room. And the other children? The ones on the list. Some we managed to locate in time. Others, the detective opened a folder with photos. We need your help to identify if you know any of these families. The photos showed children of different ages, all dressed in quality clothing, clearly from affluent families. Edward recognized two of them. This one is the son of Robert Mendez, the owner of the supermarket chain. And this girl, I think I've seen her at ISA's school events. Robert Mendez's son disappeared 6 months ago. The family paid a ransom, but the child was never returned. The silence in the room was heavy. Aunt May broke the silence with a question that had been hammering in her head. Detective, what about Vanessa Smith? Was she arrested too? Yes, she was one of the first, and she is cooperating with the investigations. In fact, we discovered that she herself was a victim of this network when she was a child. How so? Vanessa was kidnapped when she was 8 years old, in a small town in California. She spent years being exploited until she managed to free herself when she became an adult. But instead of seeking help, she became part of the system. It's a pattern we see in some cases, victims who become perpetrators. Edward sat back down. And now, what happens to Lucy? She will be charged with conspiracy, child trafficking, kidnapping, and several other crimes. She will likely receive more than 20 years in prison. But the most important thing is that, with her cooperation and Vanessa's, we managed to dismantle the entire network. She is cooperating? At first, she resisted, but when it became clear that her accomplices had abandoned her and that she alone would be held responsible for everything, she decided to talk. Sometimes fear speaks louder than loyalty among criminals. Aunt May thought of Isabella, who was at home with Grandma Celia, playing in the garden unaware of what was happening. And Isabella? Will she need to testify? No, she is too young, and you have already provided all the necessary information. We will spare her from this entire process. The only thing we need is psychological support to ensure she hasn't been traumatized. Edward nodded. I've already scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist. The first session is tomorrow. When they left the police station, Edward and Aunt May walked in silence to the car. The March sun was strong, but both felt a strange chill thinking about everything that could have happened. May, Edward said as they got into the Audi. I wanted to ask you something. Whatever it is, Dr. Edward, I know you have already agreed to live with us, but I wanted you to know that this is not just out of gratitude. It's because I realized that you are the person who loves Isabella the most in this world, after me. Aunt May felt her eyes welling up. Doctor, that girl turned my life upside down. When I started working for you, I had just lost a baby. It was my first child after years of trying to get pregnant. Edward stopped the car at the traffic light and looked at her in surprise. May, I didn't know. No one knew. I never spoke about it. But when Isabella was born, it was as if God placed her in my life to heal that pain. She became the daughter I could never have. And that's why you protected her like a mother would. Yes, and I will continue to protect her until the day I die. They arrived home and found Isabella in the garden with Grandma Celia, an elegant woman in her 60s. With well-kept white hair and a warm smile, the girl was showing her grandmother her favorite flowers. Grandma, look, these are the flowers that butterflies like the most. They are really beautiful, my granddaughter. Do you know their name? Aunt May taught me. They are lantanas. Edward smiled at the scene. After so much tension and fear, seeing Isabella playing normally was an immense relief. Daddy, Grandma, Isabella ran to hug them. Grandma Celia is teaching me how to make bracelets. That's great, Princess, Edward said, kissing his daughter's forehead. Did you have fun today? A lot. And you know what else? Aunt May is going to live here with us forever. Celia looked surprised at Edward. Is that true? Yes, it is. May has become a true part of the family. Celia smiled and hugged Aunt May. That's wonderful. I always knew you were special to ISA. Sarah used to say that if anything happened to her, she would be at peace knowing that May would take care of our princess. Aunt Sarah said that. She did. She saw how you looked at Isabella. She said it was a mother's gaze. That night, after dinner, when Isabella was already asleep and Celia had retired to the guest room, Edward and Aunt May sat on the porch to talk. May, there's something I've been thinking about these past few days. What is it, Doctor? I want to formalize your position in Isabella's life. I want you to be her legal guardian in case something happens to me. Aunt May was in shock. Dr. Edward, I don't know if I can accept such a big responsibility. May, you just saved her life. If that doesn't prove you're the right person to care for her, I don't know what does. But what about Aunt Sarah's family? Grandma Celia? Celia is already 65 years old. She loves ISA, but she wouldn't have the physical ability to raise her if needed. And you? You are already her mother in every way except on paper. Aunt May looked at the stars in the San Francisco sky and thought about everything that had happened in the past few weeks. She had risked everything to protect Isabella, and now Edward was offering her what she desired most in the world, to be officially the mother of that girl. If that's what you want, and if it's best for Isabella, then I accept. It's what I want most in the world, and I'm sure it's best for her too. That night, Aunt May went to sleep in her new room, which Edward had completely renovated, knowing that her life had changed forever. She was no longer just an employee. She was a mother, a protector, a guardian of a treasure that had almost been lost. And as she listened to the soft sounds of the sleeping house, she knew she had finally found her true home. A home where true love had triumphed over evil, and where a 5-year-old girl could grow up safe, protected by those who truly loved her. From the next room, the gentle sounds of Isabella's breathing reached her. It was the sweetest sound in the world, the sound of protected innocence, of love that overcame fear, of a family formed not by blood, but by the choice to love and protect. 6 months had passed since Lucy's arrest, and life in the Golden Gate Park mansion had found a new routine. It was a sunny September morning when Aunt May, now officially May Almeida, after Edward had initiated the adoption process that would make her Isabella's legal mother, watched the girl playing in the garden with a grace she hadn't shown in a long time. Aunt May, look at how many butterflies, Isabella shouted, pointing to a group of monarch butterflies dancing among the newly planted flowers. They remind us that spring has arrived. They are indeed beautiful, my princess. May replied from the terrace, where she was preparing a special snack. Today was an important day. Dr. Richard Moore, the child psychologist who had been following Isabella since the incident, would conduct his final assessment. Edward appeared on the porch, already dressed in a suit for another day of work. Since the events with Lucy, he had completely reorganized his schedule, prioritizing being present in his daughter's life. "How is she today?" he asked, watching Isabella, who was now trying to make a crown of yellow flowers. "Happy as always. I think Dr. Richard will be pleased with her progress." Indeed, the progress had been remarkable. In the first weeks after the revelation about Lucy, Isabella had shown some concerning symptoms: occasional nightmares, fear of leaving the house without her father or Aunt May, and excessive distrust of strangers. But with family support and proper psychological care, she had recovered impressively. "Daddy, come play," Isabella called from the garden. "Just a minute, princess. Daddy needs to finish getting ready." Edward turned to May with a serious expression. "May, there was news from the police station yesterday. I wanted to tell you before Dr. Richard arrives." "About Lucy?" "About the trial. It will start next month. And they found 2 more children." May's face lit up. "Alive. Alive and well. A 7-year-old girl who was in Argentina and a 6-year-old boy who was being raised by a family in Uruguay. The families that bought them didn't even know they were stolen. They thought it was a legal adoption." "Thank God," May murmured, making the sign of the cross. "And the real families? They are being reunited this week." The officer said our testimony was crucial in breaking the whole network. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Dr. Richard, a 40-year-old man, bald, with round glasses and a gentle smile that immediately won the trust of children. "Good morning. How are my friends from Golden Gate Park?" "Dr. Richard," Isabella exclaimed. Isabella ran from the garden to hug the psychologist. "Look what I made." She proudly showed her flower crown. "It's beautiful. Can I try it on?" "Sure, but be careful not to crush it." During the session, which took place in the playroom that Edward had set up especially for Isabella, Dr. Richard observed how the girl interacted with her toys, how she talked about her routines, and especially how she referred to the time when Lucy was in the house. "Isabella, do you still remember Aunt Lucy?" he asked while she organized the dollhouse. "I remember. She gave me a nasty medicine that made me sleepy. But now she's gone and won't come back. And how do you feel about that?" "Fine. She didn't really like me, did she? Adults who like kids don't give them nasty medicine." Dr. Richard exchanged a meaningful glance with Edward and Aunt May, who were observing the session. The simplicity and clarity with which Isabella processed the events were impressive. And now, how do you feel about your family? Now I have Daddy, Aunt May, who has become my real mommy, and Grandma Celia, who comes to visit us all the time. And there's Uncle Mark, too. Mark was Aunt May's nephew and a private investigator who had helped with the case. After the situation was resolved, he had become a frequent visitor to the house, developing a loving uncle relationship with Isabella. After the session with Isabella, Dr. Richard spoke privately with Edward and Aunt May in the office. I can say that I'm impressed with her recovery, he began. Children who go through traumas like this usually take years to fully recover. But Isabella shows extraordinary resilience. What do you attribute that to? Edward asked. First, to the fact that she wasn't actually removed from her safe environment. The trauma was interrupted before it fully materialized. Second, and more importantly, to the environment of love and security that you provided throughout the recovery process. Aunt May felt her eyes welling up. Doctor, will she be okay? She is already okay. In my professional assessment, Isabella has completely overcome the trauma. She understood, within her childlike capacity, that she was protected by the people who truly love her. This has strengthened her bonds instead of weakening them. Edward breathed a sigh of relief. So can we consider this chapter closed? From a psychological standpoint, yes. She can continue her life normally. Of course, we will always be attentive to any signs, but I believe it won't be necessary. After Dr. Richard left, the family gathered in the kitchen for a conversation that Edward had been planning for weeks. ISA, Aunt May and I want to talk to you about something very special. About what, Daddy? Edward knelt down to Isabella's level, with Aunt May by his side. Would you like Aunt May to be your official mommy? On paper too, not just in your heart. Isabella's eyes lit up. She can really be my mommy? Yes, she can. If you want, we can make a paper that says she is your mom forever. And can I call her mommy? Aunt May knelt down too and held the little girl's hands. My princess, I would be the happiest person in the world if you called me mommy. Mommy May, exclaimed Isabella, jumping into Aunt May's lap. Now I have Daddy and Mommy again. The three embraced in the kitchen, and Edward felt that finally, his family was complete. Not in the way he had imagined when Sarah was alive, but complete in the way life had allowed. That afternoon, after Isabella went to play in her room, Edward and Aunt May sat in the garden to discuss the next steps. May, or should I say Mommy May, Edward joked, I want you to know that this adoption process doesn't just change the legal situation. It changes everything. You will officially be her mother. I know, Dr. Edward, and I'm ready for that responsibility. I also want you to know that, in addition to the adoption, I want to make a donation to you, an amount that ensures your financial independence and Isabella's, in case I'm not here one day. Doctor, that's not necessary. It is, May. It's necessary, and it's fair. You saved my daughter and became the mother she needed. It's the least I can do. That night, during dinner in the kitchen, they had abandoned the formality of the dining room. Preferring the cozier atmosphere of the kitchen, Isabella made an announcement that moved both adults. Daddy, Mommy May, I want to tell you something. What is it, princess? Today I dreamed of Mommy in heaven. She was very happy because now I have a new mommy to take care of me. Edward felt his throat tighten. And what else did she say in your dream? She said that Mommy May has a heart just like hers, and that I can call her Mommy without feeling sad, because love never ends. Aunt May couldn't hold back her tears. My beautiful princess. Mommy May, why are you crying? Because I'm very happy, my love. Very, very happy. After putting Isabella to bed, now officially as a mother, for the first time, Aunt May sat on the edge of the bed and watched the girls sleeping peacefully. She thought about the whole journey that had brought them to this point. The fear, the terrible discovery, the courage to face danger, and now, finally, the reward of seeing that child safe and loved. From the hallway, Edward appeared at the bedroom door. How's our girl? Our girl is fine. Very fine. They left the room and walked together down the hallway. On the wall, there were family photos. Edward and Sarah with baby Isabella, birthday pictures, and now, a new photo they had taken at the park, the three of them together, smiling. Edward, Aunt May said, stopping in front of the photos. Can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you think that Sarah would approve of all this? Me becoming Isabella's mother. Edward looked at the photo of his late wife and smiled. You know, Aunt May, I think Sarah planned all of this from heaven. She always said you had a mother's heart. I think she knew that one day you would be exactly what Isabella needed. They went down to the kitchen together, where Aunt May prepared tea for both of them, a routine they had developed in recent weeks, a moment of conversation and planning at the end of the day. You know what impresses me the most? Edward said, stirring sugar into his tea. What? How Isabella processed all of this. She turned something terrible into something positive. She gained a mother. Children have that ability, right? To find light even in the darkest situations. And you, Aunt May? How are you processing all of this? Aunt May smiled, a serene and complete smile. I am at peace, Edward. For the first time in a long time, I am completely at peace. I have a daughter, I have a family, I have a purpose. What more could a woman want in life? Outside, the night in San Francisco unfolded normally, but inside that mansion in Golden Gate Park, three people had found something rare and precious. A family formed not by chance or convenience, but by pure love, mutual protection, and the courage to do what is right. And in the upstairs room, a 5-year-old girl slept peacefully, knowing she was protected by people who truly loved her, a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life about what family really means. 2 years later, on a sunny March morning in 2026, Isabella ran through the same garden where everything had begun, but now at 7 years old, with a maturity that impressed everyone. She wore the uniform of her new school. Edward had decided to transfer her to a smaller, more welcoming college where she felt safer, and her brown hair swayed in the braids Aunt May lovingly made every morning. Mommy May, Daddy, come see, she shouted, pointing at a different butterfly that had landed on her favorite lantanas. It's a new species. From the terrace, Edward and Aunt May watched the scene with calm smiles. Edward, now 47, had a few more gray hairs, but his eyes showed a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Aunt May, officially Aunt May Almeida for a year and a half, radiated the happiness of a woman who had found her true place in the world. Our daughter has become a butterfly expert, Edward commented, sipping his morning coffee. She inherited that from her biological mother, Aunt May replied. Sarah also loved gardens and little creatures. The relationship between Edward and Aunt May had evolved into something very special. They were not husband and wife, but partners in raising Isabella, united by a brotherly love and the shared responsibility of caring for the girl they both adored. That day, they had an important commitment, the final trial of Lucy Fernandez. After months of proceedings, the day of sentencing had arrived, and they had been invited to attend as victims of the crime. Are you sure you want to go? Celia asked, who had arrived the night before to stay with Isabella during the trial. It's not mandatory. We do want to go, Grandma, Edward replied. We need to see this story come to a definitive end. And there's more, Aunt May added. The officer said several families of the other children will be there. We want to meet them. Isabella approached, still watching the butterfly that was now flying in circles above her head. Daddy, Mommy May, are you going to the boring place today? Yes, Princess. But it's important to close an old story. The story of Aunt Lucy who didn't like children? That's right. Isabella thought for a few seconds, with the seriousness she sometimes showed that surprised adults. Can I say something? Of course, my love. I'm happy that Aunt Lucy happened. Edward and Aunt May exchanged surprised glances. Why, Princess? Because if she hadn't happened, I would never discover that Mommy May loves me just like a real mommy. And you would never discover that you are a family even without being married. The simplicity and wisdom of Isabella's observation left both adults moved. You are a very wise girl, you know, Aunt May said, hugging her daughter. Grandma Celia taught me. She said that all the bad things that happen have a good reason hidden. In the courtroom, a few hours later, Edward and Aunt May sat in the gallery reserved for victims. Next to them were 5 other families who had gone through the same terror. Parents who almost lost their children to the criminal network dismantled thanks to the evidence they had provided. Are you the Almeida couple? Asked a lady of about 60 years. I'm Marina Smith. My grandson was one of the children found in Argentina. How is he? Aunt May asked with interest. Well, thank God. It took a few months for him to readjust, but now he's normal. And you? How is your little girl? Very well, Edward replied. In fact, the trauma has strengthened our family. During the trial, they heard details about the extent of the criminal network that left everyone stunned. Lucy had been directly responsible for 15 kidnappings in 3 years, moving over $2 million. Vanessa Smith, who had already been tried in a separate case, received 12 years in prison but had her sentence reduced for cooperation. When the moment of sentencing arrived, Judge Dr. Mark Johnson, a serious man of 55 years, was clear and direct. Lucy Fernandez da Silva, for the crime of forming a gang for trafficking minors, qualified kidnapping, ideological falsehood, and other related crimes, this court sentences you to 25 years of imprisonment in a closed regime, with no right to progress for the first 8 years. A murmur of satisfaction spread through the courtroom. The victim's gallery. 25 years was a heavy sentence, ensuring that Lucy would not pose a danger to other children for a long time. Edward held Aunt May's hand. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over," she confirmed. After the trial, the families gathered in the courthouse cafeteria to talk. It was a meeting that mixed relief, gratitude, and also the shared pain of what everyone had gone through. "You know what impresses me the most?" said Robert Smith, the businessman whose son had been one of the victims. "It's how our children have recovered better than we have." "That's true," agreed Sarah, mother of a 6-year-old girl. "My daughter has almost forgotten everything. We are the ones who still have nightmares sometimes." "That's natural," said Aunt May. "Children have a healing capacity that we adults lose. They live more in the present than in the past." "And how did you manage to overcome?" asked Marina. Edward and Aunt May exchanged glances before responding. "Love," Edward said simply. "A lot of love, a lot of presence, and the certainty that family is stronger than any evil." "And also," Aunt May added, "the certainty that every child is a treasure that deserves to be protected. It doesn't matter where they come from or who their parents are. A child is sacred." When they returned home in the late afternoon, they found Isabella in the garden with Celia, planting sunflower seeds. "Daddy, Mommy, Aunt May, how was the boring place?" "It was good, Princess. The story ended well. And now we can forget. Now we can forget and only remember the good things," Aunt May confirmed. That night, during dinner in the kitchen, which had definitely become the family's favorite place for meals, Isabella made an announcement that surprised the adults. "Daddy, Mommy, Aunt May, I want to do something." "What is it, my love?" "I want to help other children who are scared like I was." Edward put his fork down. "What do you mean, Princess?" "Grandma Celia told me that there are many children who need help. I want to do something for them." Aunt May smiled, proud of her daughter's sensitivity. "What kind of help would you like to give?" "I want to teach them to take care of gardens and butterflies. Because when we take care of beautiful things, we forget about the bad things." Edward felt his heart warm. His daughter, at 7 years old, already showed a generosity and wisdom that many adults took a lifetime to develop. "You know what, ISA? I think that's a great idea. How about the 3 of us start a project?" "What kind of project?" "A project to teach gardening to underprivileged children. Right here at home, on weekends." Isabella's eyes sparkled. "Really? They can come here to plant flowers?" "Yes, they can. And Mommy Aunt May can teach them how to bake cakes too. Are you all in for this?" Aunt May asked, excited about the idea. "Of course," Edward said. "In fact, I've been thinking for months about how to give back for all the good that has happened in our lives. I think this is the perfect way." 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, the garden of the mansion in Golden Gate Park was filled with cheerful children's voices. 15 children aged 5 to 10, from shelters and NGOs in San Francisco, were learning to plant seeds and care for seedlings under Isabella's guidance, who had become a dedicated little teacher. "Look, everyone," she said, holding a basil seedling. "You have to make a little hole like this, place the plant carefully, and then cover it with soil. But don't press too hard." Edward watched from the porch, alongside Aunt May and Mark, Aunt May's nephew who had become part of the family and helped with the project as a volunteer. "Look at our girl," Aunt May commented proudly. "Who would have thought that a child who almost became a victim would turn into a teacher for other children?" "She inherited your calling to care," Edward said. "And your generosity," Mark added. One of the children, a 6-year-old boy named Jack, approached Isabella with a question. "ISA, what if I don't know how to take care of my little plant at home?" "Don't worry, Jack. Aunt Mary will teach you," she replied, referring to the social worker who accompanied the group. "And next Saturday, you bring it here so we can see how it's growing." By the end of the afternoon, when the children went home with their little plants and a gardening kit that Edward had provided, the family gathered in the garden to appreciate the day's results. "How do you all feel?" asked Celia, who had come to spend the weekend with them. "Complete," Edward replied. "For the first time since Sarah's death, I feel completely whole." "And you, Aunt May?" "Fulfilled. Very fulfilled. I discovered that my mission in life was not just to care for Isabella, but to help other children too." "And you, Isabella?" The girl thought for a few seconds, watching the butterflies dancing among the flowers planted by the visiting children. "I feel like the butterflies, free and happy, and I want all children to feel that way too." That night, after Isabella went to sleep, Edward and Aunt May sat in the garden for their nightly conversation ritual. The sky was starry, and the scent of the flowers planted during the day filled the air. "Aunt May, can I tell you something?" "Of course. You saved much more than Isabella's life. You saved our entire family. You saved me too. Edward, you saved me too. You gave me a daughter, a family, a purpose." They sat in silence for a few minutes, gazing at the stars and listening to the gentle sounds of the San Francisco night. "You know what I've learned from all this?" Aunt May finally said. "What?" "That family isn't about blood. It's about love, protection, and choice. We chose to be family, and that's much stronger than any blood tie. And Isabella chose to have two moms, one in the sky is one on earth. And now she is choosing to care for other children too." Edward smiled. "I think we are raising a very special girl. We are not raising her. She is special. We are just giving her the conditions for that light she has to shine." Up there, in Isabella's room, the girls slept peacefully, dreaming of gardens full of butterflies and happy children. On her bed, in a simple frame, was a photo of Sarah, her biological mother, next to a recent photo of the family, her, Edward, and Aunt May, hugging in the garden. Two mothers, one father, and a girl who had transformed trauma into a mission of love. A family formed not by fate, but by the conscious choice to love, protect, and care. And in the garden, the butterflies continued to dance among the flowers, reminding everyone that beauty and hope always find a way to bloom, even after the darkest storms. The story of Isabella, Edward, and Aunt May was not just about a thwarted kidnapping. It was about the transformative power of true love, about how the right people come into our lives exactly when we need them, and about how even the darkest moments can lead to the brightest light. In the mansion at Golden Gate Park, a family had discovered that true love knows no bounds, recognizes no social barriers, and is capable of turning any pain into hope. And every week, 15 children came to learn this lesson in the butterfly garden, where Isabella taught that caring is the most beautiful way to love. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and share your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very exciting.